Hi everybody, thanks for joining me today as we go into IBM TRIRIGA Building Insights, IBM's tool that leverages Wi-Fi data, IoT data, and also AI models to understand room utilization inside our real estate portfolio. Today we're logging into the main screen for TRIRIGA Building Insights, or TBI, and we'll see immediately that we're populated with our hierarchy levels that are coming in straight from our TRIRIGA instance. I've logged in today as a space planner in North America, and because of my security preference, I'm only seeing North America today, but that is fine by me because we're drilling down into Charlotte Watson Center. So it looks like this building that we're going to be covering today in terms of looking at utilization and how we can optimize the space. We currently have 6 floors set up that we can look into. While I could drill down on those floors if I click on the name right here, I'm going to go ahead and get us started in the historical dashboard that covers the entirety of the building. So when we open up the historical dashboard, we immediately see on the left-hand side that we can choose either to use our Wi-Fi sensors here or our IoT sensors. The main difference is when we're using Wi-Fi sensors, we're bringing our employees in, having them connect to the Wi-Fi network, and based on how many access points we have, we're able to see kind of as they move around the building where they're standing, where things are being occupied a little bit more than others. And if we wanted to go into IoT sensors, this is where we get a little bit more granularity. So maybe there's sensors on each desk that say, okay, someone is actually sitting at this desk, and it's not just kind of a range of someone might be in this area. Right now, we're going to stick on to our Wi-Fi sensors, and we're looking at this data. It's important to know, first and foremost, that when we're looking at this data, when we're looking at occupancy rates, these are shown as averages of daily peaks. That's important, especially when we're looking at the last 30 days, which is just a kind of a combination of all that we've seen in the past 30 days. Of course, we can do custom date ranges or any other of these kind of built-in ranges for the flexibility of the space planner in here. Going back to the summary table, if you remember from the last page, I said there were 6 different floors inside this building. So it looks like maybe we don't have things set up for the 5th and 6th floor. This might just be because there's not sensors currently online, or maybe I think the 6th floor actually is the roof, so we might not have sensors up on the roof. Let's go over and talk about what this occupancy rate is. And again, this is coming from those Wi-Fi sensors, and it's comparing what our occupancy count is. So this is what our Wi-Fi has measured people coming in over the last 30 days, the peak average, versus how many work points are assigned to this floor and what those capacities are. So what these two numbers mean is that we might have 289 desks or areas for people to sit, but based on split shifts and sharing desks, we might actually have a capacity of more than just those desks. So whenever we go over back to this occupancy rate, we're seeing the occupancy count over the work point of the capacity. Going into these numbers right here, these percentages, 70% and 91%, these inherently make sense to me. It means that we're using a good amount of our occupancy, but we're not going overboard. There's not too many people in these areas. Looking into areas of the 1st floor and 4th floor, however, have numbers that are a little bit higher and may be concerning. But the thing that's very important about TBI and what's really impressive about it is it gives us the insights to understand why this number is happening. In the past, maybe you just inherently say, this number is wrong, it can't be right. But with TBI, we really want to understand what's going on in our floors, so let's do that right now. 1st floor. My current thoughts is, look at this occupancy count. This makes sense because while there only might be a capacity of 239 people, 1st floor typically is where reception is. This is where people are walking through on a daily basis. So that makes sense that this number is a little higher. These people need to pass through the 1st floor to get to the other floors. Similarly with the 4th floor, I like to think of this maybe as a mail room, for example. So there's 2 mail workers working there on average, and then people are coming up to grab their mail. In my personal opinion, when I worked on the same floor as the mail room, I noticed way more than an average of 42 people coming day in and day out. So believe it or not, this number might be a lot lower than some other organizations. Scrolling down, we see our occupancy rate, our occupancy count, and our work points for the entire building. We can see immediately some trends saying that this has dropped off recently, but because we have that rolling 30-day average, we still might be showing above occupancy rate even if it's been lower recently. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. we always have the ability to drill into more details, or we can go into the information center and understand exactly what we're looking at, and even open up the Learn More tab to go straight into the Watson Knowledge Center to get a little bit more detail, especially if you're training on the software or a little bit newer to it. From here, I'm going to go ahead and go into our second floor and get a floor view of this building. So immediately looks pretty similar. Our new tab across the top is going to be Other Spaces. So work points is usually desks, offices. Other spaces might be meeting rooms, huddle rooms, cafeterias. So it's very important to get both of these in our utilization and make sure we understand not just what's happening at the desk level, but at the whole floor community level. From here, again, we can see that we're looking at the Wi-Fi sensors, but we now have the ability to see which organization is taking up the most space or using the most occupancy. We'll see that maybe it's a little bit lower here because, COVID's going on. We have to adjust to less people being in the office. But what I really want to call out in terms of this page is we, again, have our occupancy rate, we have our occupancy count, but now we have our frequency rate. So what a frequency rate is based on how many hours a space is available, how often is it being used. And when I see these oscillations, my first thought is, okay, maybe the building is technically open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Most people do their work at 9 to 5, so maybe less people are using certain buildings in those early hours, in the later hours throughout the day. And that's what I use to understand these frequency oscillations. Same with occupancy rate. We might see people leaving the building a little bit early at the end of the day. Some people, because they come in early, might want to leave at 4 instead of 5, and that's again why we see these oscillations. Let's go ahead and drill down into this occupancy count though, get a little bit more information here. Here we're using AI data to understand when we might have abnormalities in our data. So we say based on historical trends that the red dots are abnormalities. If you look at the blue dots as well, that's if we want to normalize that data with AI, that's where it's very much possible. So we give our space planners the option to say, there was an event today that has more people here than usual. I'm either going to keep that in my data to show that this was an event, or I'm going to remove it and say, no, let's normalize that because this is out of the ordinary. I don't want it to skew my larger set of data. So by using AI to recognize this pattern, that's not only what the AI can be used for. Another really great use case is that the AI actually learns the hours of the building. So it can say, all right, even though we have a few people working on the weekends, that's not when the majority of the people come in. So let's not count occupancy on the weekends because that will, again, skew our data into something that is not quite accurate. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes here to give these beautiful graphs to you guys. But let's go back to the second floor. Let's take a look now at our other spaces. To do this, I'm going to switch over into our IoT sensors. And you'll notice that the immediate change on this page, may I say, is the duration. We now see how often these meeting rooms or storage rooms or any of the kinds of space classes are being used throughout the day. Here we go back to that frequency rate and also our occupancy rate. It looks like we might need a few more printer and fax rooms, and our people are really using those balconies to get a little bit more private space during the workday. So using some really good just inferences from this data, we can do a lot with it. We can also look at a floor view to understand what's going on in terms of utilization. So here again, it looks like we're having a really high occupancy rate in some of these specific meeting rooms. We might want to look into getting more meeting rooms and turning some of these cubicles into rooms where people can meet up a little bit more often. The one other thing I want to go back and show you guys is if we go back to Explore into Charlotte, when we drill down into those floors this time, we can actually go into this RealTime Dashboard. So if we open this up for the first floor, we can actually see a really nice heat map of what's going on in near real time. I like to think of it, it really is real time, but this is updating every 15 minutes. So we can see immediately, what's unoccupied, what's exceeding capacity, or we can go back over into our Cisco DNA spaces. And when we do that, we are going to be able to open up a really amazing heat map and see exactly where people are in the building. So we see right now, due to COVID, there's not as many people sitting in their workstations, but there's a lot of usage going around the corridors, maybe walking through this floor to get to another part of the building. The last thing I want to touch on is the current occupancy count. This is something that's completely configurable, but we like to think that it's green if it's 80% capacity or less, kind of warning or approaching capacity at 81 to 99%. Then of course at 100% or greater, it's at capacity. And we just want to let the space planners know that, hey, maybe something should be changed, especially during COVID with these social distancing protocols. We should space people out a little bit. But overall, this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to TBI. There's so many amazing insights that we can get out of this. And again, partnering with IBM Watson to give us these AI-driven insights. It's a tool that has so many capabilities. I'm always excited to talk about it, and I'd love to see some people that want to know more. Thanks, everyone.